Yeah, this movement in this margin from 50.7 to 52.4, is it significant enough to show that the economy is out of the woods yet, especially on the supply side of things?
It's good news, but it's by no means enough. You know, just 1 month's data coming in reasonably good is not enough. Obviously, if you had it over time, you know, significantly above 50, you would see an improvement, because the 50 mark for any kind of PMI number is always going to be the break-even mark. Below 50, you're shrinking. Above 50, you're expanding. So being above 50 for a prolonged period of time will be positive. But that being said, the damage done by the strikes was prolonged, was pretty significant. We even had things like, for instance, BMW coming out and saying that it had curtailed future expansion plans in the country. We don't know how much other business, other planned investment was actually curtailed by the fact of the strike in the country.
Isn't it the same as having a rainbow at the moment after the storm, but not sure if whether or not to forecast in the future, you could have another storm that is having a devastating effect?
Yes, I mean, in fact, the storms become predictable. Every strike season, we see heavy striking action in the manufacturing sector. So this is not the first time this has occurred. We've seen every single strike season, basically the end of winter and so on. That's when strike season really kicks off into higher gear. We see increased industrial action occurring, and that of course is quite negative for producers, especially companies like BMW want to come to the country, produce and export to other markets. If we, for instance, Africa, aren't able to produce our parts, it can hold up an entire global supply chain, and that might be something the company doesn't want to take the risk of.
Now, to have a positive job creation as well as high wage settlements, is this going to just spurn off high productivity and sales only during the festive season, and will be back at one after the festive season?
Yeah, look, if we can have increased productivity and increased sales going forward, that'll be obviously something that needs to be sustained. The wage increases you mentioned, the fact that we have reasonably high wage increases occurring in the sector, at the same time we have reasonably low levels of productivity. So for instance, if you look at companies like, say, the car companies, the amount of money they're willing to pay workers in, for instance, the US or Europe is vastly larger than the amount they're paying in South Africa. Now, that's not because they want to be discriminatory, maybe it is slightly, but the quantum is quite large. I mean, they're paying multiples of what they pay South African workers in those countries. But at the same time, those workers are significantly more productive per unit hour of labor than a South African worker. If we were able to get our productivity levels up to the levels of the Americans or the Europeans, we would find that car companies would be falling over themselves to pay us higher wages. If, however, we just keep our productivity low and demand higher wages, then we'll find investment probably looking elsewhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about high productivity, now let's look at the cascading down effect of the e-tolls that's going to have on business and on the consumer as well. I would imagine how painful it's going to be.
Yeah, look, it works in a number of ways. Firstly, a business, for instance, you're a food business. Generally, the things that you are transporting, or things you sell, are transported to your shop. And now those things are going to cost slightly more because of the fact that the company that's doing the transporting has to pay for the e-tolls. At the same time, the people that you're selling to will have slightly less money in their pocket because they also have to pay to e-tolls to drive to your shop to buy those goods. And so you have a squeeze on both sides. So we've already seen some signs that some retailers are looking to actually raise prices of their products. They couldn't raise it by the full amount of the e-toll, but they are going to raise it by a little bit. At the same time, consumers are going to be faced by a double whammy: the fact that they have reduced disposable income, and the fact that they have to spend a little bit more on goods that they are buying because of that. In addition, you have some weird effects coming through. For instance, with e-tolls, what happens is people are going to go away from the freeways more towards the towards the back roads, the suburb roads, effectively. In that case, what happen is that you might find certain suburbs have significantly higher levels of traffic coming through them than they normally did, and that might alter the, for instance, the property value. If you bought a suburb or in a suburb that was reasonably quiet, and you thought, okay, I'm going to pay extra for that quietness, you may find that the extra traffic reduces that value. And those are the kind of strange off effects that you might have from something like the e-tolls, which will affect an entire, provincial economy like it does, but you just can't work through all the possible implications of it very easily.
Mm-hmm. I think that it will be naive just to forecast with only one quarter. What can we expect, say, in the next 3 quarters to say that the economy is actually coming out of the woods yet? And because we've had the Reserve Bank having to downgrade the growth of GDP last week. So then what can we expect?
Look, the unfortunate thing is that the forecast that we tend to be given out by the Reserve Bank and by other institutes always have 3-4 years down the line as being very positive. The 3%, 4% growth rates. As we go to the year before, it comes down to about 2 point something. And unfortunately, this year, we're looking at the current year being at 1.8, and they always are being lowered down. Look, we need to have a recovery in the global economy. That's obviously one positive. But if the global recovery or global economy recovers, and we don't do something, very significant with regard to things like infrastructure development, with regards to skills development, with regards to make the ease of business better, we'll find that will miss us. That boat will miss us by. So we need two things. We need firstly to work on our own issues, but also we need to hope that the global economy recovers, and that's actually going to be a positive feedback loop.
Right. That's Viv Govender of Vunani Private Clients, of course, giving us his analytical perspective in as far as the economic outlook is concerned. In the meantime,